According to Libbie Hawker, if you dream of being a full-time author, you need to learn to write fast. And that's exactly what Libbie, I've decided we're on a first-name basis now that I've read her book, that's exactly what she teaches in Take Off Your Pants. This book is a guide to plot outlining that enables you to increase your writing speed, efficiency and confidence so that you can write lots of novels that people actually want to read and make money from doing it. Libbie says that pantsing, writing a book without any kind of plan and therefore flying by the seat of your pants, is fine if you just want to write as a hobby or a side income, but it won't work if you're hoping to make a full-time income from your writing because you just won't be able to write fast enough. The book says, and I agree, that writing fast without a plot outline is almost impossible, unless you are a very rare, very gifted, part human, part god. Everyone has the ability to write books very fast, but the vast majority of people can only do so if they've plotted the book beforehand. So, how do you plot the book beforehand? First, you need to work out your story core. Your what? Your story core, the heart of your story. Libbie says that every compelling story has the same 5 components at its core. 1, a character. 2, the character wants something. 3, the character is prevented from getting that thing easily. 4, so the character must struggle. And 5, ultimately the character either succeeds or fails in getting the thing that they wanted. All good stories contain these 5 components, even if it's not always easy to see. For example, every Harry Potter book ultimately has the same core. The main character, Harry, wants to destroy Voldemort, partly to get revenge for the murder of his parents, bit toxic, but also to prevent Voldemort harming anyone else. It takes 7 books for Harry to ultimately defeat Voldemort, and old Voldy doesn't go down easily. Harry has to overcome a Gringotts vault-load of obstacles, which means he struggles a lot. But in the end, he succeeds and gets the thing he wants: peace. Libbie explains that the story core is supported by 3 key and equally important pillars: the character arc, theme, and pacing. These 3 pillars form the acronym ATP, which, having a science background, I was very excited when I realised this because ATP is the main form of energy used by cells in the human body. So you can think of the story core as the heart of the story, and the heart needs energy in the form of ATP in order to beat. Every story needs a core and the 3 pillars, just as every living mammal needs a heart and ATP. Without ATP, you'd have a heart, a story core, but it would be dead. ATP, the 3 pillars, is what makes the story come alive. You might notice that we haven't mentioned plot yet, and this is because the book says that plot is the least important part of a story. Plot is a sequence of events. Story is a character's progression from emotional point A to emotional point B. Therefore, it's actually possible to outline a story without knowing the plot. So if you're currently a pantser and feel like outlining will stifle your creativity, fear not. The first pillar, the A in ATP, is the arc of the main character's emotional journey. To create a character arc, you first need to give your character a flaw. This flaw has to 1, be big and significant enough that it's having a negative impact on the character's own life by holding them back in some way or by hurting the people around them. And 2, since the character works to better themselves and overcome the flaw throughout the entire story, this flaw has to be something that the character can change. For example, the flaw can't be that the character is a Slytherin. Once the hat sorts you, you're stuck and there's no changing its mind. But the flaw could be that the character is selfish or power-hungry. Up until now, all the Harry Potter references have been for my own amusement, but Libbie actually uses a Harry Potter reference as an example in this section. She points out how, in the first book, Harry starts off as very meek and lacking assertiveness, and throughout the first book, he builds his confidence and starts to be more assertive by going against his teacher's instructions to do what he thinks is right. In fact, the whole series follows Harry's character arc as he builds more and more confidence and becomes more and more of a leader, first leading Dumbledore's army and then ultimately leading an entire real army in the Battle of Hogwarts. Although the whole story is about the character's journey to overcoming their flaw, and they should successfully overcome their flaw by the end, the character does not have to succeed at anything else. As long as they've successfully changed who they are internally, it doesn't matter if they don't successfully achieve anything externally. It will still be a satisfying ending for the reader. apparently. Personally, I like a happy ending all round. The character can fail and it can still be a good story. I struggled to come up with my own example for this one because these are exactly the kind of stories I try to avoid. I had to run through a list of stories I don't particularly like, mostly because they're sad, not because they're not well written. In the end, I came up with Romeo and Juliet. Juliet matures and becomes an independent woman, so even though she dies, which is a bit of a fail, she successfully transforms from naivety into maturity. And Romeo, well, he matures and then dies too. Although it could be argued that they successfully achieved their goal of being together, if you count being together in death as a success. Either way, the ending is satisfying despite being sad because the characters successfully overcome their biggest flaws. The flaw is the first thing you should put into your novel's outline. It's tricky to show the whole novel outline framework on a single screen, so I've created an outline template that you can fill in yourself, along with some study notes for this book. If you'd like them, you can download them using the link in the description. By this point, you should have a main character, give them a name and decide where and when they are living. You should also have decided on this character's big flaw. Now it's time to decide how your story is going to end, in very broad terms. You know for sure that your character is going to overcome their internal flaw, so that's a given, so write that down. But it's time to decide if they are also going to achieve their external goal. You don't need to know what this goal is yet, but in order to set the tone of your book, you should decide whether it's going to be a double success on both the internal and external fronts, or a bit of a fail in terms of the external side of things. Okay, I just said you didn't have to decide what your character's external goal was yet, and you didn't, but now you do. The external goal should be something that the character is striving to achieve for the entirety of the story, and something they fail to achieve until the end, or maybe not even then, because of their internal flaw. The external goal forces the character to recognise and overcome their flaw in order for them to get what they want. Congratulations! You have just finished creating your story core, the heart of your novel, as well as most of the character arc. To finish planning out the character arc, there are a few more things you need to work out. The first one is your story antagonist. I've read elsewhere that the antagonist in a story doesn't necessarily have to be a character. It could be a group, society, or even a different part of the protagonist themselves. However, in Take Off Your Pants, Libbie talks about finding a single character within your story, who's not the main character, to be the antagonist. The antagonist must have the same external goal as your protagonist. However, their motive and methods for going about achieving this goal will likely be different. The antagonist acts as a symbol of what the protagonist could turn into if they don't fix their flaw. Libbie says to use your main character's flaw and external goal to work out who the protagonist in your story is. Note that being evil, or even just a bit mean, is not a required characteristic of an antagonist. They are just the person who wants the same external thing as the main character, and since they go about achieving it in a different way, will provide a challenge to them getting it. Voldemort is a pretty obvious antagonist. However, at first it seems like his external goal is the opposite of Harry's, not the same. Libbie says that sometimes you need to look at external goals from a different perspective to see how they are really both the same. In Harry Potter, both Harry and Voldemort want to determine Harry's fate and fulfill the prophecy. So, in this way, their external goals are really the same. Finally, it's time to create an ally, and then you're done with creating the character arc. The ally is the person who forces the protagonist to face their flaw in order to achieve their external goal. The ally doesn't have to be a friend of the main character. They don't even have to like the main character. They just have to force them to face their flaw. To begin with, your protagonist will try to achieve their external goal without facing their flaw, because they believe there's a way they can get what they want without having to change. But the point of the story is to show them that this is impossible. Because the external goal is so closely tied to the internal flaw, the external goal can only be achieved when the internal flaw is changed for the better. A lot of people help Harry throughout the book, so in a way he has a lot of allies, and different ones in different books. The one who forces the biggest change though, the change just before the climax of the Deathly Hallows, is Snape. That's it! Arc down, theme and pacing to go. Let's start with theme. Theme is a one-sentence summary of the point of your story. What worldview or perspective are you overall trying to convey? Without a clear and very specific theme, a story often feels disjointed and potentially even pointless, because it literally is. Without a theme, your story doesn't have a point. To figure out what your story's theme is, try asking yourself, why did you pick the character flaw you did, and what point are you trying to make by getting the character to work on changing this flaw? For the sake of the ongoing Harry Potter example, the theme that runs through pretty much every scene in every Harry Potter book is love conquers evil, and also love transcends death. Theme down, just pacing left. But before we get there, the book says you should work out the overall plot, which is really just the main characters struggling to achieve their external goal a bunch of times and failing. Libbie bases her key plot points on the mythic hero's journey. Rather than describing each main plot point here, I've included them with descriptions in the plot outline template linked below. If you like creative freedom when you're writing, leave your outline here and get to work. But if you're interested in improving your writing speed and efficiency, then you should also plan your story's pacing, the final pillar, before you start writing the first draft. Libbie says that all good stories are shaped like an inverted triangle. The story starts out broad, the character has lots of choices, then as they start to make decisions, they get directed onto a narrower and narrower path, and as the path gets narrower, they start moving faster. As well as the overall inverted triangle story shape, Libbie says that every individual chapter and even every individual scene is also shaped like an inverted triangle. The story is just a chain of triangles where the point of one triangle funnels into the top of the next one. The character has a specific goal in every scene. It's a goal that in some way they think will help them reach their specific goal in the chapter. And the chapter goal is something they think in some way will help them reach their overall external story goal. To improve pacing, Libbie suggests adding a symbol crash at the end of every scene and chapter. What she means by this is to end every scene on a bang, even just a little one. Some kind of emotive, impactful final image. Note, if there's no logical symbol crash at the end of a chapter or scene, then you need to rethink that specific scene or chapter's goal and change it to something that can logically end in a symbol crash. So, every scene should relate to the story core and start with a character's specific scene goal. It should involve conflict to them reaching that goal and result in them either succeeding or, in my experience, more often failing at achieving their scene-specific goal. Then include a symbol crash at the end. I've found that often just making the failure happen in a surprising way means that this twist of failure at the end of a scene or chapter is a symbol crash in and of itself. Use your theme to determine the worthiness of every scene idea you have. If the scene doesn't have any relevance to the theme, don't include it. It's not relevant to your story. And that's it. That's essentially take off your pants in a very large nutshell, like a coconut or something. I hope this was helpful. I definitely recommend picking up a full copy of the book if you haven't already. Happy writing!